Thank you, guys. Yeah. Well, good morning. There's a writer whose name was William Sidney Porter, but he went by a pen name, O. Henry. And back about 100 years ago, actually even in the late 1800s, early 1900s, he wrote short stories, and the stories would always have a twist at the end. And one of his, probably his most popular story is The Gift of the Magi. Now, you might not be familiar with the title, but you've probably heard the story. It's a young couple. They are a little strapped for cash, and each one of them in their own minds is trying to figure out what wonderful gift they can give to the other person. And so the man has this old pocket watch that he inherited. It's his most dear thing, and he thinks, well, what I am going to do is I'm going to sell this pocket watch, and then I'm going to buy these wonderful combs, high-quality combs, for my wife, who's got such beautiful long hair. Meanwhile, she's thinking, I want to buy something special for my husband, and wouldn't it be nice to buy him a safety chain for his pocket watch that he would value so much? So she cuts her hair and sells it so that she can buy the chain. And then, of course, as they exchange gifts at Christmas, they're just both teary-eyed and just so touched that this other person would do this for them. And what they did, of course, is they let go of something material in their lives that they thought was so important, so that they could express love to each other. And I find in my own life, whenever it gets to the end of a calendar year, I start taking inventory and figuring out, what can I do in this new year? One of the things is, what other ways can I find to express love in this world? How many people have ever made a New Year's resolution? Yeah, most of us have. And especially earlier in my life, before discovering Unity, there was always that sense of seeing how many of them I would actually fulfill in the coming new year. And as a recovering perfectionist, it seems like I could always find fault with my New Year's resolution, or I could always find fault with me in some way or somehow. But as we're considering 2019, what do we want to create in the new year? And sometimes it takes letting go of stuff that were very useful, very valuable to us in the past. Now, in Unity, we believe that the Bible is rich in symbolism. In fact, any narrative story in the Bible usually has this embedded symbolism that makes it relevant and actually very helpful to living a life, a spiritual life, in the 21st century. So, we seek actually to live the teachings of Jesus rather than finding significance in his death. So in the Gospel of Matthew, 16th chapter, 19th verse, Jesus is talking to his 12 disciples, and at that point, they're talking about who they think the reincarnation of Jesus is, because Jesus is probably reincarnated as one of the prophets. So one of them says Moses, another says Elisha, and then he turns to Peter and says, Peter, who do you say I am? And Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter represents faith, and he starts recognizing, no, there's something different here. There's a divine presence that's available here. And at that point, Jesus says, Peter, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. All of the Bible characters, including Jesus, are things that are going on within us. Each of us has a Christ consciousness that we need to awaken to inside. And our 12 disciples, Peter represents faith. So he puts his faith in that one divine presence that's within each of us. That one begotten Son that we've heard so much about is that divine perfection that's in each of you. The divine idea of the perfect you. And yet so many of us find ways of thwarting, expressing that perfect us when we're out there in the world. So, remember I've talked about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. When we read the Gospels, you'll notice there's this difference. And the kingdom of God is the absolute realm of God, never changing. God is always there, never changes. The kingdom of heaven, though, is our ever-growing spiritual awareness. We don't need to be more spiritual. We're already spiritual beings having a human experience. But how much of the day or the hour can we remember that and not get caught up in the physical world appearances? So, he talks about the keys to the kingdom of heaven. You've got the keys to the kingdom of heaven now. You can expand this awareness. And then whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So what are the things that are binding us in the physical world? Because we're going to carry that binding over into that spiritual realm as we live a spiritual life. And the same thing is, what are we willing to loose and let go of in the physical world so that we can have that loosed in our spiritual awareness? Each of us has developed a self-image over our lifetime. And I know in my life, I see how many times that has changed, but it's based on the experiences we've had, the feedback we've had from other people, some of the pleasant experiences, but also some of the unpleasant experiences. And so we have to make a decision. Are we going to change our self-image? Because it doesn't matter what we want in this world or what we believe in this world. What matters is who we choose to be in any given moment. And when it comes to like New Year's resolutions and taking inventory of our lives, we need to decide, who do we want to be? And a lot of times we've carried forth a self-image without really thinking it through. Like if somebody is poor and sees themselves as a poor person, they can talk all they want about winning the lottery and being rich. The thing is, they're expressing that poorness. Same thing with health or occupation. What is your passion? What is it you want to express? Because whenever we choose to change that self-image, all of the old messages are going to come up for us. And they're going to, and it can be discouraging until we really weigh the excuses we come up with for not doing the things that we know in our heart we need to do. Because we examine each excuse, you're like, this doesn't hold water. But yeah, it's something I heard earlier in my life and took as the gospel truth, but it's not. That resistance surfaces. Negativity surfaces. And we have the choice. So when that resistance comes up, it's like, okay, this doesn't serve me anymore. I can get rid of it. I can move on. In the letter of James, 1st chapter, 2nd verse, James says, "My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let that endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing, but ask in faith, and it will be given to you." Oh boy. I don't know how many times, in my life I've had to face this. It's like, yeah, whatever trials I'm facing, can I face it with joy? Can I say, God, show me the good in this? That's the way spiritual law works, though. Through us, we have these opportunities for spiritual growth. And through us, we get these ideas that come to us, and we have an opportunity to express them. And we draw forth this divine substance that underlies everything. It's the energy that underlies all atoms and molecules. And so when we have the idea and we have the passion, we have the desire to move forward with them, we can create the life that we really want and the things in the life that we really want. So consider everything that's happened in your life, especially the toughest things. Haven't you found that, yeah, it made me stronger, or it made me wiser, or it made me more peaceful? We live and we learn, but we all deserve better. We deserve better. So here's our chance to start again with the beginning of a new calendar year. We can turn the page on the calendar, but we also have the opportunity to turn the page on our lives as well. And of course, that's been used often as a metaphor, the new chapter in our lives. So, yeah, we all make mistakes, but we make them less often. Here's some excerpts from the article by Herbert Hoover. Now, of course, he was the president elected in 1928, and of course, in October 1929, the Great Crash. But for most of the 20s, he was the Commerce Secretary and would write often very inspiring pieces. So let me give you a couple excerpts from one of his pieces in the 1920s. "In my opinion, there has been too much talk about the common man, that this is the century of the common man. We are in danger of developing a cult of the common man, which in my mind means a cult of mediocrity. Remember that the great human advances have not been brought about by mediocre men and women. They were brought about by distinctly uncommon people. with a vital spark of leadership. Many of the great leaders were of humble origin, but that alone was not their greatness. It is a curious fact that when you get sick, you want an uncommon doctor. And if your car breaks down, you want an uncommonly good mechanic. The future of America rests not in mediocrity, but in the constant renewal of leadership in every phase of our national life. You know, he's got a good point there. So many times people just are willing to accept whatever is there, rather than being willing to go above and beyond. People who, though, follow through on their divine ideas, these are the people that we build statues to. So what are your gifts? What are your passions? What is it that you need to express in the world? Something that you do better than probably anybody else in the world. And it may seem insignificant to you, but if it's your passion, you need to express it. So are you willing to become an uncommon person in 2019? I guess we need to start with looking at our self-image. And in this era where we understand the importance of recycling, there are a lot of things I don't want to recycle about 2018. And you probably feel the same way. So, practical steps we can take. First, ask yourself, what are the things that were the most important to my parents? Because a lot of times our parents who are authority figures project stuff onto us. And we learn a lot of good things, but there are certain things we need to let go of. And of course, the classic is don't talk to strangers. Well, when you become an adult in your 20s and stuff, it's important to talk to strangers. But so many people in their teens and 20s seem to be awkward about that because they're still following that old rule, and you need to let it go. Yeah, it was very valuable when you were 6 years old, but not when you're 26. What are the other things, too? I'm aware of a young man in his 20s who's still trying to kind of sort out his life. But he was very good in math and science when he was in school, so his parents, wanting the best for him, kept really pushing him to go into engineering when he went to college. And so he went into engineering. But in his first 2 years of college, he discovered he hated engineering. Yeah, he liked math and science, but engineering wasn't his thing. And so he had to kind of drop out of college, and he's still trying to sort it out, and with his parents as well. So were you pushed into doing something that you don't want to do, or are you pushing somebody into doing something that might not be right for them? Are you spending time proving the worldview of your parents rather than your own heart's desire? Then ask yourself, what are the 5 things I like best about myself? And then, of course, you can ask, what are the 5 things I like least about myself? Again, what are we binding ourselves to, and what are we losing in this world? It's fascinating how so many people, when they look at their list of the things you like best and the things you like least about yourself, you're so focused on the stuff you like least about yourself. But whatever we focus on expands. So perhaps look at those 5 things you like best about yourself and choose 2 of them that you think you could actually do better in 2019. Strengthen a strength that you already have. And then, yeah, go ahead and choose something in that weakness aisle or that thing you like least and see if there's something you can do better there. But, like I said before, I'm a recovering perfectionist, so a lot of times those things that I could certainly improve upon, I have to really be honest and really realistic with myself. What are the things I can really change, and what are the things I can't? I'm trying to get age 62, and it seems like no matter what I do, I have this curve in my midsection. But I can eat healthy, and I can exercise regularly, and I can visualize those washboard abs I used to have in my 20s. 6-pack coming soon. And then finally, what are the 5 things that are most important to you? What do you really value? And are you truly expressing those things that are important to you? Are you expressing your gifts, passions, and talents? It's a matter of really looking at our priorities, and this is always a good time of year to do it. So consider the people around you. Are they supportive of what it is you want to do? And are you getting good feedback from people? When Carl and I were traveling in the 90s teaching the prosperity seminars like we did here in January 1992, one of the things I would say to people is like, once you've figured out what it is that you want to do and you start talking with other people about it, They'll say things like, "Oh, no, you don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. That's silly." And I used to wonder, well, wait a minute. If this is my divine idea and I need to carry it forward, why am I getting the naysayers? And it dawned on me that when most of us hear something like that we picture ourselves doing what that other person says they want to do. So it's very easy to see why the person would say, no, you don't want to do that. It's like, well, no, that's not true. The person who has that divine idea does need to do that. I don't need to do that. But rather than project that preference onto that person, allow that person to express who it is that they really need to be. So a lot of times we have to slough off a lot of negative comments once we're willing to move forward with what it is we know we really need to do. I'm going to have Duncan put up the slide of this week's takeaways. Here are the things to carry forward. And then I was talking to someone earlier this morning who's kind of had their notepad, and they were actually working on what do I want to be in the new year. So divine order here. Okay, start by turning the page to 2019. Okay, a calendar, but what about you? Who do you want to be in 2019? What are you going to bind, and what are you going to loose? What are the things that you need to hold on to? What are the things you need to let go of? Because whatever it is, you're going to be living it in 2019. Release your parental expectations. What are the things that were projected on you by authority figures in your life or your parents? What do I like best and least about myself? And look those things over. Like I said, by all means, take some time to think, maybe there's a strength that I could strengthen. And what's important to me? What are the most important things to me? And how am I going to plan to be able to do them in a healthy way in 2019? But the most important thing is recognize whatever you choose to be, you will be. And whatever resistance that comes up, you can handle. This is your time. This is your place. I'll close with the words of Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives, but be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you, but be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight, but create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous, but be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten, but do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough, but give your best anyway. It was never between you and them anyway. In the final analysis, it was between you and God. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace. Let's prepare for meditation.